Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is, where are we now? Friday, March 22nd. Friday, March 22nd, 2019. Welcome to it in the midst of, as we mentioned yesterday, March craziness. Not the basketball tournament of the similar name. I wouldn't dare say that online. But well, there we are. We have it. It's a nutty, wacky day. Trump on his way out the door, apparently, already getting set to hit the jetways and get to his weekend golfing. That should keep him relatively quiet for the weekend. I don't think they could have passed up the opportunity to ship him out of town this weekend, since he's been so riled up so far already this week. It's been an interesting one for him, a revealing one for him. He continues to battle with the still dead John McCain. Over what, I'm not certain, and lots of people noting via Twitter in the last couple of days that he's even, in addition to, lying about what's been going on, or what I guess hasn't been going on between him and John McCain since John McCain is not alive, but he's lying about the circumstances under which it even came up, and I don't think I even got that right yesterday. I mean, I don't pay close enough attention to worry that much about how he gets around to saying the crazy stuff he says. But as it turns out, we did mention yesterday that he went on a bit of an extended rant, and I don't think I really filled in all the details about how it happened and where it happened. It was I mentioned that it was in this tank factory. It's been really crazy, and apparently he brought the subject up and alleged in a much longer rant than I was originally aware of that he was doing so because he was being constantly pestered by people in the media, in the press, to discuss his relationship with John McCain. And as it turns out, that's not the case either. He's actually lying about that, and he's simply bringing him up on his own and insisting. Many people are asking me. People are always coming up to me and asking, what about John McCain? What about John McCain? And none of that is true. It's been very interesting. And of course, it also turns out that the claim for which this issue, I guess, first rose to prominence, I don't know how to put it, but the original claim was that I personally gave John McCain the funeral he wanted, the National Cathedral, the state affair of it, and that it required presidential approval. And I just brushed past that, which is a cardinal sin with Donald Trump. Never take him at his word. Never forget to question whether or not he's telling the truth and whether or not there's any proof of it, because you'll often surprise yourself, or now you won't be surprised, but you'll often find that none of what he says bears even the most remote resemblance to the truth. And as it turns out, but it's one of those things that, well, it sounds like, I remember they made a big deal out of the funeral, and it was a semi-state affair, and I assume, I don't know whether there's a strict qualification for what counts as a state funeral and what doesn't, but it was such a dramatic affair and involved so many of the pieces of our government, either officially or unofficially, that it passed for a state funeral, at least in my memory. And I figured, okay, well, it might be one of those things that technically the president has to sign off on. They have standard paperwork already prepared somewhere. Not that the Trump administration flunkies could have found the stuff or even reproduced it correctly. But it didn't occur to me to question whether or not it would require some level of presidential approval to leverage those kind of resources for a funeral like that. And it turns out it would have been a very good question, because at least the folks at the National Cathedral, where the funeral service, the memorial service, was actually held, they say, no, you had little to nothing to do with it, and it would never require your permission to say what's going on at the National Cathedral. That would create all sorts of problems all by itself. A highly ranked and highly recommended diary at Daily Kos by Durati has the lowdown on this. National Cathedral to Trump on McCain funeral. No, you didn't. What's this all about? Well, when the National Cathedral calls you a liar, you are most certainly a liar. That certainly, well, I mean, I don't know that necessarily the National Cathedral people are any recognized arbiters of truth either, but it certainly stings to be called a liar by anyone, and if that anyone is the National Cathedral, well, you know, you could check their record, but I think they do a lot better than Donald Trump on this stuff. But so, Trump's larger attack here is contained in a video clip from C-SPAN, which covered his monologue, I guess you could call it, from the tank factory, and tweeted it out, and it's embedded in the diary here. I'm wondering if my sound system is set up right. You should hear this thing. I mean, it's really, we'll have to stop it here and again because it's actually pretty long. It was almost 5 minutes long. The key part of it, which was the last minute or so, we heard about yesterday. It was this thing about I gave him the funeral that he wanted, sort of thing. But just for some flavor, I would like to play a little bit of this and see if you, I don't know. There's nothing to decide here. It's just get a flavor for how furious Trump is and how much time he's spending stewing over this, which is largely not true. I mean, it's based on a lot of lies. And Daniel Dale, I think, did catalog the lies. He begins by, I guess I should just play the thing, but he begins by lying about what he thinks was John McCain's role in, as he likes to say, the dossier. Have you heard about the dossier? Listen to this. Let me see what the sound quality is like on this.
Because they love me and they ask me about.
Yeah, you got to hear the beginning of this.
A lot of people are asking because they love me and they ask me about a man named John McCain.
All right, so right away, right out of the box, what? No, that can't possibly be true. A lot of people ask me. That's a hint. No, nobody's asking you. By the way, I should. Is all of that coming out? I should check the levels on this thing. So he says a lot of people ask me, which is a obvious hint that he's lying. They ask. About because they love me. That's another thing. A lot of people ask me because they love me. Wow, there's so much wrong with that. And how many words is that even? What about John McCain? Okay, fine.
And if you want that to tell you about, should I or not? Yes? Yes? So I have to be honest, I've never liked them much. Hasn't been for me.
I mean, that by itself is pretty astonishing in terms of what goes on in the Washington consensus to say something like that. Used to be out of bounds. And by the way, did you like the way he uses the audience? And I shouldn't tell you, but should I tell you? Yeah. I don't know what audience they put together for this thing in the tank factory, but there's a number of problems with this speech, not the least of which is that it's full of lies and violates, so many norms. But I don't think that the venue ordinarily, if anybody else makes this speech, it's a major infraction, a major scandal that you get so political in a speech like this given by the president that, it's an official White House event. You're not supposed to be this overtly political. But, Trump does this all the time, so whatever. Let me go on.
I've really probably never will. But there are certain reasons for it, and I'll tell you. And I do this to save a little time with the press later on. John McCain received a fake and phony dossier. Do you hear about the dossier? It was paid for by crooked Hillary Clinton.
See, already we're in trouble, right? crooked Hillary Clinton thing, the campaign line from behind the podium with the presidential seal on it at a manufacturing plant, ostensibly an official stop, not a campaign thing. And I wish you could see maybe you saw this stuff too already. The visual of him visibly boiling over inside, and of course, with the orange face and the puffy white eyes and the sniffing and all of this stuff. It's really an insane bit, and I don't know. I mean, you already know how out of bounds it is to be this openly furious with somebody else. Although I guess there's room for finding it somehow refreshing instead of pretending that everybody is your good friend.
Right?
Listen to the booing.
And John McCain got it. He got it.
He didn't get
and
it.
What did he do?
He got it, but he didn't get it. He's got his timeline screwed up. Everything's wrong with this.
He turned it over to the FBI hoping to put me in jeopardy. And that's not the nicest thing to do. When those people say, because I'm a very loyal person. John McCain campaigned for years to repeal and replace Obamacare. For years. In Arizona, great state. I love the people of Arizona.
Yeah, not your fault, people of Arizona. I love you. He's a very loyal person, except when it comes to paying people for their work or helping them out after they've helped him out,
But he campaigned for years for repeal and replace. So did Rob, so did a lot of senators. When he finally had the chance to do it, he voted against repeal and replace. He voted against at 2 o'clock in the morning. Remember, thumbs down. We said, what the hell happened? He said 2 hours before he was voting to repeal and replace, and he went thumbs down. Badly hurting the Republican Party.
All right, again, infraction, Republican Party. Not supposed to be doing this at a presidential event.
Badly hurting our nation. And hurting many sick people who desperately wanted good, affordable health care.
There's a nice delusion for you there, too. He hurt many sick people who wanted good, affordable health care by repealing the health care that they had that was, relatively affordable. So an amazing political delusion going on here as well.
Would have had it. This would have saved our country over $1 trillion in entitlements.
Right there, the giveaway. This would have saved our country over $1 trillion in entitlements. He says as though it's a good thing, speaking to people who depend, no doubt, on their entitlements for their health care, their basic maintenance. In other words, it would have cut $1 trillion out of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, et cetera, all the things that the people he just said he was hoping to help actually depend on. But he glosses right over it, because to him, cutting $1 trillion out of entitlements is a good thing, and a good thing for me is a good thing for America.
And we would have ended up making a great health care plan, frankly, with the Democrats, because they would have had no choice.
Yeah, we would have made a great one. It'd be great. We just make it.
Didn't get the job done for our great vets and the VA, and they knew it. That's why when I had my dispute with him, I had such incredible support from the vets and from the military. The vets...
Listen to it's funny, too, the way he really does have a very discernible whining voice. From the vets and the military. Our great vets, why didn't we do you remember? Thumbs down. Nobody notes this. I don't know why. I guess he's just so disgusting to listen to at all times that, I don't know. I'm not certain why that doesn't get more play. All right.
Were on my side because I got the job done. I got choice.
Choice.
Accountability. Accountability meaning somebody mistreats our vets. For 45 years they were trying. They mistreat our vets.
Again, Daniel Dale noting with this one, oh, yes, okay, so he's talking about Veterans Choice Program, etc. Once again, another attempt to claim credit for passing the thing that he didn't pass. Oh, for 45 years they tried to do it, and only I could get it done. It was actually passed before he was in office, and a few doodads that he signed along the way that I guess amounted more or less to administrative paperwork on the thing. But the choice program just isn't his. It's not.
And we say, hey, you're fired. Get out. Can't mistreat our vets. They never got it done.
Meanwhile, this is like 5 minutes in the middle of what? What is this speech supposed to be?
Decades, they wanted to get choice. You know what choice is? You're a military person. You're one of our great people. To me, one of the great people.
To me,
For many
of all
decades,
people.
they couldn't get it done. It was never done. I got it 5 months ago. I got it done. Choice. Instead of waiting in line, a vet fought for us. Fought in these tanks.
He didn't.
Fought
They're
for
new.
us. Instead of waiting in line for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, people waiting online.
2 days, 2 months, 2 years. People waiting in line. So
They're
sad.
not very sick. By the time they see a doctor, they're terminally ill.
That's right. Yes,
We gave
exactly.
them
Right.
choice. If you have to wait for any extended period of time, you go outside, you go to a local doctor, we pay the bill, you get yourself better, go home to your family.
Any extended period of time.
And the other thing is we're in a war in the Middle East that
McCain put us in. Yeah, I mean, that's true.
He was calling President Bush all the time, get into the Middle East, get into the Middle East. So now we're into that war for $7 trillion. Thousands and thousands of our people have been killed, millions of people overall. And frankly, we're straightening it out now, but it's been a disaster for our country. We've spent tremendous wealth, and tremendous lives in that war. And what do we have? It's worse than it was 19 years ago. I call them the endless wars. 19 years ago when we started. So John McCain left it. I endorsed him at his request, and I gave him the kind of funeral that he wanted.
This is the part we talked about
yesterday. Which, as president, I had to approve. I don't care about this. I didn't get thank you. That's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
And that's on the way.
That's the big tip-off is I didn't get a thank you. That's okay. Always the that's okay lets you know that it's really bothering him. He's seething over this thing. So I'm told that I guess the volume wasn't high enough for most of the clip, and I just sort of corrected that at the end. But anyway, I should probably move on. I was just sort of astonished. The rest of the clip we heard enough about, I think, yesterday. I just thought that was so amazing that he spent so much time in this speech seething about John McCain, and now it turns out that his excuse for doing it, that he's been asked over and over by members of the press, please tell us, because we love you, about your relationship with John McCain, and even that turns out not to be the case. And I guess people maybe are beginning to catch on with exactly how frequently Trump and the people around him, everyone knows about his lying, but how frequently they are lying about a very particular sort of thing. I guess the sort of thing that is so easily verifiable or disprovable as fact that they think that there's no way, they think other people think that there's no way anyone would lie about these things. This came up again earlier this morning. I noticed a clip from Anderson Cooper's show, Anderson Cooper 360, on CNN, interviewing former Nebraska Senator Bob Kerrey and former Democratic presidential contender as well, Bob Kerrey. Bob Kerrey came out on this program, and I don't even know what prompted. They must have asked him about it, but I'll just rather than play the clips, because we're finding out that the clip volume isn't high enough, and now I think I've got that fixed. But Anderson Cooper's tweet: former Nebraska Senator Bob Kerrey challenges Trump to prove bone spurs actually prevented him from serving in Vietnam. Yeah, remember that whole thing? Here's the quote from Bob Kerrey. He sees all of us who went to Vietnam as fools. We were the ones that didn't have the resources to be able to get out of the draft. Let's see those x-rays. He wants, in other words, documentary proof that he actually even had those bone spurs that he claims kept him out of Vietnam. Now, I don't know whether in any other context Bob Kerrey would sum up his the experience that led him to serve in Vietnam as, I wouldn't have if I had had the resources to be able to get out of the draft. I mean, it's a true statement that he probably didn't. I don't know that he was seeking to avoid the draft either, so I'm not certain, where he was in all that time. He may have always dreaded going. I mean, everybody dreaded going, but there was dreaded going, and I'll go anyway, and there was dreaded going, and I'm going to try and do something to make sure I don't have to. I'm not sure which camp he was in, but what the real point, I guess, of his saying this is he's basically saying, yeah, I bet there's no x-rays of your bone spurs either. And I mean, if you were going to use them to get out of Vietnam, then almost certainly you were x-rayed. And there's been some speculation that the doctor that he got to certify that he was 4F and not eligible for the draft because of the bone spurs may just have been somebody who was doing the Trump family either a favor or who had been forced into doing this for the Trump family because he was a tenant of one of Fred Trump's commercial properties, and that there were no bone spurs at all. Kerry, in other words, is saying, I think he's saying, I don't know whether he really knows this like the rest of us do or not, but that it's a good bet that there's nothing genuine about it. There's no genuine paperwork behind his claim then or now of bone spurs, and that he's probably lying, as he often does, about facts so readily provable that he just thinks everyone will be like, well, there's no way that he would just lie about that because we could go and check, Of course, he missed Vietnam. We know that much. And he could just lie and say he went. I mean, why didn't he just do that, I guess? And maybe that is more readily provable and more dangerous thing to do. But, it's always a pretty good bet that if he says it was because of bone spurs, that should be on the record somewhere. There should be x-rays. There's film on this somewhere. My records were destroyed. They were stolen by, the Khmer Rouge or something. I have no idea what his excuse would be. And, records do get lost. It's a long time. But, usually you can be pretty sure that there's just no substance, or that you won't be looked at funny anymore for demanding proof, just as we learned yesterday. You're collecting rent on this building, Mr. Kushner? It must be because you own it. Do we know that he owns it? I don't know. I haven't seen the bank paperwork. And certainly if you learned anything ever from David Dayen, you will have learned that banks' paperwork about who owns what isn't any more reliable than anything else out there in the Trump administration or otherwise. But not only did he, did we not make him prove that he owns the building, we have no proof because now we know there is no proof. He never bothered to get the paperwork to prove that the building could be occupied, either commercially or in some cases in residential buildings, residentially. Had no certificates of occupancy. Just one of those things that we assume that a landlord who is letting you live there and charging rent and accepting it and depositing those checks in the bank account and complaining about your being late about it and all that, we assume that he's got all these things. Because the world's how could the world possibly work otherwise? It's too crazy a thought to even contemplate that the person coming to collect your rent has no right to have you living there and no right to be collecting rent for it. That's too audacious. It's too brash a lie. It couldn't possibly be true. It just happens to have turned out to be true, and, well, what are we supposed to do about that? Okay. I don't know what to tell you. Just doubt everything, I guess. I'm hopeful that that's the realization that Bob Kerry has come around to. Oh, that reminds me. I forgot to do this, and I meant to do it this morning. Maybe I'll take care of it during our first 2-minute break coming up here. I need to change my pinned tweet, which many of you who follow me on Twitter may know is my November 25th, 2016 tweet that just simply states Mike Flynn is a spy. He is. It's held up pretty well. And it occurs to me, based on the stories in the last couple of days, that I forgot I need to change my pinned tweet over to one that either says all alone or adds to it that Jared Kushner is a spy too. As it turns out, lots of discussion. Where did I even put these aside? I'll probably go over to the Daily Kos front page for these stories. Surely, story on it, reporting about it, will be easily found there or about to come up on the front page. But lots of reporting yesterday about, ironically, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump both using, and we knew about this, but now I guess really nailing things down. And that's why I want to try and find some of the newest reporting to see exactly what are the details we're uncovering here. How extensively the two of them have used private servers for email through which they do official work, to the extent that they do any official work for the White House. And of course, Jared Kushner's private messaging on WhatsApp with other, with officialdom from other countries, not being, of course, disclosed, not being a part of the presidential records, which will eventually be open for inspection and review, and not revealing the contents of his discussion with the rest of the foreign policy establishment, etc., so that they can know what's going on. Problematic in a number of ways, and it's things we knew about, but I guess now we're establishing with either more certainty or it turns out to have been more extensive, or I guess the news yesterday was that his lawyer, Abby Lowell, was admitting to Chairman Cummings that he still does it. This was discovered some months ago, and I guess it was presumed, because how else could it possibly be, that he was no longer going to do this now that he was discovered. Nope. It would be too audacious, right, to keep going once discovered. So he kept going because nobody bothered to ask or see if he stopped. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal. Except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on it. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's just, keep going with this particular angle on the story. The latest on the complaints about the way the Kushners are communicating with everybody. The front page work on this one, top Democrat seeks info on Kushner, Ivanka, using, that's not her name, but it is her name, it's Kushner, Ivanka, but they mean here Jared and Ivanka, using personal email accounts for official work. Carrie Elveld putting this one together for the Daily Kos front page staff. House Oversight Committee Chair Elijah Cummings raised concerns Thursday that several White House officials, including Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, and it's bad enough that they are White House officials, that's a violation in itself, had violated federal records law and jeopardized national security. Only one of those things, is going to mean anything to anybody, really, and not enough of them, by using personal email accounts for official business and failing to properly document their communications. I think it goes without saying at this point, that is, of course, the reason that they kept calling Hillary Clinton Crooked Hillary and lock her up was a big chant. That's obvious to everyone, right? In a letter to White House counsel Pat Cipollone, we never did figure out how to say his name, Cummings wrote that Kushner's lawyer, Abby Lowell, told him and former oversight chair Trey Gowdy, remember him, last December, that both Kushner and Ivanka had been using personal email for official business. I don't know how it came up. I don't know why Lowell said it, but, he did. Kushner has also been utilizing the encrypted messaging service WhatsApp to interact with foreign counterparts. And who's a counterpart to him, really? Is there another? I guess in Saudi Arabia, it's possible to talk to direct counterparts. Head of state's son-in-law will be in government in certain countries, I guess. But I don't know who he thinks his counterparts are. But basically, foreign officialdom, raising questions about whether he had been recording those interactions. For example, during a meeting with Mr. Kushner's attorney, Abby Lowell, Mr. Lowell confirmed that Mr. Kushner has been using the messaging application WhatsApp as part of his official White House duties to communicate with foreign leaders. Cummings wrote to Cipollone. Mr. Lowell could not answer whether Mr. Kushner's communications included classified information, which would be a major security breach, but instead directed the committee to inquire with the National Security Council and the White House. I don't know whether Abby Lowell would have the answer to that question or not, but, I guess it's possible. But it would be based on, I suppose, somebody else's say-so. And I guess the National Security Council and the White House would ordinarily be the people to tell you. It's just that they probably won't now because they'll need to cover up Kushner's ass. Cummings also said Lowell argued that Kushner was supposedly documenting his communications through WhatsApp by taking screenshots of them and forwarding them to his official White House email account or the National Security Council, which I guess would be a workaround. It's just, you shouldn't be communicating this way to begin with. Not officially documenting such communications undertaken in an official capacity is a violation of the Presidential Records Act. But as you know, this, like so many other of our laws, have no specific penalties attached to them for not complying. The shame of not complying was supposed to be enough. They can come up with punishments. It's just that they're, I guess now there has to be something in the statute. You get your hands chopped off. That's what they would probably do with you in Saudi Arabia. Cummings' letter also asserted that Lowell told them Ivanka was using personal email for official business, but failing to forward some of those emails to her official White House account unless she replied to them. Lowell quickly responded with a lawyerly parsing, that's what he does best, of Cummings' characterization of what was said during that December meeting, calling it not completely accurate. Lowell maintained that he hadn't exactly said Kushner was communicating in this manner with foreign, quote, leaders or officials, but rather he has used them with, quote, some people, and I did not specify who they were. Okay, interesting. Now I'd like to know who they were. Lowell offered similarly ambiguous language to argue that he never completely confirmed Ivanka's use of personal email without documentation. The entire letter read more like an effort by Lowell to insulate himself rather than attempt to shed light on the matter. Likely true. Cummings' letter said the committee had also obtained additional documents showing former White House officials Steve Bannon and K.T. McFarland had used personal email for official business. McFarland, while serving as Deputy National Security Advisor, allegedly used her AOL account. Wow. You still have one? To communicate about transferring sensitive U.S. nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia in coordination with Tom Barrack. How interesting. Of course, Barrack, a personal friend of Trump who ran his inaugural committee, the biggest slush fund going. And, of course, we've read all about this idea of transferring sensitive U.S. nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia, which is a particular obsession of the noted spy Mike Flynn. The oversight panel released new details last month of the scheme by Barrack, former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, and other Trump officials to sell nuclear technology to the Saudis. Bannon also received Barrack's pitch on the plan at a personal email account, while he was serving as White House chief strategist, according to the letter. Cummings charged Cipollone with informing the panel by March 28th, or else nothing, about whether the White House would reply to its query for information on the matter. As you know, the White House has not produced a single piece of paper to the committee in the 116th Congress in this or any other investigation Cummings wrote. The White House's failure to provide documents and information is obstructing the committee's investigation into allegations of violations of federal records laws by White House officials. Yes, it's happening. And, I'm glad we had the opportunity to point it out. Let's see. There's another recommended diary that seems to touch on the same issue, but I think that's probably the one that does so most completely and frees us from further consideration of the matter for the morning. Anyway, let's see. Other stories of note that will require some attention. There's an awful lot of them. And I'm thinking now might be a great time to switch gears once again. Let me think here. It's 9:37. Yeah, I think we actually have time to do this. Now I have to see if I can rig this up and make it work. Will I be able to put this into my soundboard and play it from there, or do I need to play it from, there's a lot of clicking happening here, from iTunes? Let me see if I can make a quick, it's not going to go quick. Anyway, I hope that doesn't screw us up when we try and play it through iTunes. But this is a total change of gears here, but this is a Friday thing to do, to switch gears and get away from stories that are so intimately tied up with Trump, who after all is on his way out the door to go play golf. So maybe we could forget about him for the rest of the first half of the show and return to this stuff later on. But I have a piece here that's been sitting in the queue for some time, I think since late February, from our friend via Twitter, Peace Arena, elsewhere online, Serena Blaze, who has sent us a piece or two before from with a more local focus, this one too focused locally, on Oklahoma and things happening there. And that's not some place that we bring the spotlight to all that often. But this is a very interesting approach and an interesting topic. Let me see if I can grab the theme here from Oklahoma Watch. The piece that she's reading here: will states' opportunity zones intended for the poor benefit mostly the rich? You remember this story? I mean, this was a question that was asked some time ago, and there's even a good segue here. You may recall that one of the big problems, not just that the opportunity zones meant to benefit the poor would instead benefit the rich, but rather that there were some very particular rich people who would likely benefit. The segue here being, of course, that Jared Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump might be among the very many rich people who benefit from this. This is a rather lengthy segment here. I better get it rolling. But thank you for recording it for us, Serena. And let me see if all the audio engineering works here. And if not, we'll be right back. But if it does work, we'll take a short pause from the live reading. Anyway, let's see. Can we make this work? Not yet. All right. There we are. Hi. Now I've now coming to my attention here that the audio is not being piped out. That's very weird because, of course, once again, it is in my ear, and I gather that the rest of it is not in yours, which is too bad. Let me see if I can pause this thing, and that causes me great concern. Why, if I may do a little bit of audio searching here, why wasn't that coming out? If the application iTunes has got it, and maybe it is because I played it off of the desktop and not opened it. Well, that's disappointing because that screws me up something fierce here. Well, I do have another piece here, and perhaps I can arrange to engineer this one up during the break. Oh, that's embarrassing. How long? So sorry about that. Didn't mean to keep dead air going for you. Let's see. How can I make this work? Well, I'll have to work on it again during a break. I do have another piece, though, that I have in my soundboard, which doesn't segue quite as easily. I guess we could say that about it. Do we have? I wonder if I opened iTunes here and played it from here, will this make a difference?
Good morning, David. This is Serena
this is the
Blaze.
old one,
I'm a
isn't it?
faithful listener.
All right, that's the previous piece, and I think that, let me just see if the level goes out here. I got to as I engineer this, I'm going to have to see. I'm going to use her old one here once again to see if I can play, and does it come out through the stream or not? One more time.
In Oklahoma.
Okay, well, that clearly works. So now the question is, can I open the file which I wanted to play and find a way to get it into my iTunes library? I may have to do that. Oh, there it is. Okay, I think I've got it. All right, well, we'll give it one more try. Let's see, 9:45. Do I think I can make it work? Maybe. Why don't I save it then for next segment? Oh, goodness. All right. Well, I'm sorry about that, Serena. I'm sorry about that for everybody else who had to sit and listen to silence. However, I do have something that I have no easy segue to, but an odd bit of news, once again spotted by and recorded for us by a good friend and listener, Darwin Darko, who occasionally will send us a piece or two. And this one, I guess, of some personal interest to him. And this one has been absent from most of the mainstream media, as far as I can tell. And I don't think, let me see, what is his source on this one? I think he names it in the recorded piece. But it's not something I didn't research whether or not it was available in the New York Times, the Washington Post, other AP or other news services, but military news, but of some particular interest, I think. Let's just roll it, why don't we? And just take a couple of minutes to catch you up on this. And I think you'll find it interesting, and probably interesting that you didn't hear the news. I don't know if there's anything, sinister behind it or what, but imagine, being in this situation and then coming back and finding out that nobody had heard about this.
Okay, so we have a story here in Business Insider by Ryan Pickrell.
Business Insider, that's not unmainstream. What am I talking
outbreak
about?
At sea has left a U.S. Navy warship quarantined for over 2 months.
All right, we got that. A U.S. Navy warship quarantined at sea for over 2 months. Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty interesting. And why I thought it was in one of the military papers, but Business Insider, not by any means, outside the normal mainstream. All right, let's resume.
And it begins. A U.S. Navy warship deployed to the Persian Gulf has been quarantined and at sea for more than 2 months because of a virus outbreak, a rare move the U.S. Navy revealed Wednesday after an inquiry from CNN. Parotitis? Somebody will correct it and, get back to us on the pronunciation here. But it's a viral infection with symptoms similar to the mumps. It's spread across the USS Fort McHenry, a Whidbey Island-class dock landing ship, affecting a total of 25 sailors and Marines. Symptoms of the illness appeared for the first time in December of last year. 6 sailors were quarantined on board the vessel and treated in the onboard medical facilities while their living areas were cleaned and disinfected. No one had been medevaced off the ship. CNN reported Wednesday afternoon, but it's very unusual for U.S. warships to spend more than 2 months at sea without a port call. Here's a quote. None of the cases are life-threatening and all have either already made or are expected to make a full recovery. Fifth Fleet said in a statement emailed to Business Insider. Since the first case was, and this is weird that Business Insider is reporting this, but I'll continue. Since the first case was detected at the end of last year, 24 to 25 infected individuals have returned to duty. The U.S. Navy told Business Insider that port calls were canceled, effectively quarantining the ship at sea while medical teams worked to get the situation under control. Exercising caution, it was determined that all of the more than 700 service members on the Fort McHenry would receive booster vaccinations for measles, mumps, and rubella. Viral parotitis is an infection of the saliva glands on either side of the face that's typically caused by the mumps, which can be prevented through vaccination. The Fort McHenry, which carries elements of the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, is currently operating in the Persian Gulf. A U.S. military medical team specializing in preventative care will be deployed to Fort McHenry in the near future to assess the crew and MEU's health. A U.S. Navy spokesman told Business Insider that a ship is like a college dorm, a locker room, or even a first-grade class. People are living in close proximity and illnesses make the rounds from time to time, but this situation is quite unusual. The Navy said that it believes it has a handle on the situation, as only a small portion of the crew has been affected by the virus. Routine unit-level training operations have continued with some modification to the training schedules. CNN reported that the Navy made no mention of the virus outbreak aboard the Fort McHenry until the outlet asked about it. So, that's an update on what's going on with our sailors at the moment. As you know, I'm in the Navy Reserves myself, been on several deployments. So I found it interesting, and hopefully your listeners can look into this and stay up to date with what's going on with those sailors.
Thanks, Darwin. Yes, so it's Darwin Messidou had sent this one to us. That's the real name that he goes by in real life, and as he mentioned, he's in the Naval Reserves himself. So this is some particular interest to him. And yeah, so I guess my confusion arose from his having noted, when I listened through to the piece, that it was odd that Business Insider was the outlet reporting this. Their report, of course, references a report from CNN. So it's I guess I misremembered, and I was still misremembering, I guess, up until a few minutes ago, that the provenance of the story. So CNN certainly reported it, but I guess the big weird part about it is they do note that no one bothered to ask, because I guess, how up to date are you as a non-naval person, assuming you are a non-naval person, with the deployment of individual ships, or, do you know who's deployed in the Persian Gulf at any given moment if it's not a family member? And do you know when a ship is being held at sea in quarantine? Of course, anytime something unusual happens to ships in the Persian Gulf, that's of some concern. And, these days, all sorts of non-conventional weaponry. Did it have anything to do with that? I hope not. It could just happen, as they mentioned. And people living in close proximity on board ship are likely to have problems that spread that way, although I guess they could be considered particularly vulnerable to weaponized problems that spread that way. But no indication that that's it. Just an indication of how good we have it, I guess, here in the country, that we tend to forget. We're able to forget the numbers of people deployed overseas in danger zones all the time. And I guess just a weird situation that, what do you do about that? How would people find out about a ship, a naval vessel held and quarantined at sea with 700 service members aboard, and no one, there's no major outcry because it's unaccounted for? It's just a weird story all around, and one you're not likely to hear, although they mentioned that it would have been reported by CNN, and of course this is Business Insider, and yet still, I don't know. I guess it's just one of those things that I suppose the Pentagon people will say, well, there's nothing to worry about here. It's just there's an illness on board. That's why we're quarantining the ship at sea. And, with this administration, there's reason to question everything. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, it was of interest to Darwin, so it's of interest to me. I thought I'd share it with you, and likely true that it will get this much attention nowhere else. So once again, having offered you the opportunity to make the show your own, as I do every day in the podcast during our little commercials about how you can contribute to the show. Well, if you do contribute, then I damn well better play the thing every once in a while too. So I think I've got it figured out now how I can play Serena's piece during the next segment. We'll take a break at the top of the hour in about 5 to 7 minutes, and give ourselves a chance to have a nice long stretch to hear about Oklahoma's opportunity zones, not necessarily a path that we turn down all the time. So it's a good day, Friday, to take things like that up. Let me grab a story or two that can occupy our time between now and the break. Cindy Yang, back in the news, back in the Miami Herald anyway. Sarah Blasky, is that that's the name, do I have the name of the reporter right? Once again, I want to make sure, click through, get it right, but I viewed all my free articles for the month in the Miami Herald, so I'm just going to have to go with the claim that the Pocket View is giving me here. And it's too bad because I want to get it right because they've been doing some fantastic work on that front. And it's worrisome that I wouldn't be able to credit the right person. But I don't know. Sarah Blasky, that's the name that's here. And it doesn't ring a bell. I thought it was somebody else doing all this work. Maybe she's doing this one. Anyway, the story itself, Cindy Yang helped Chinese tech stars get $50,000 photos with Trump. And that's not all that unusual, I guess. But there's some question here as to who paid for it, who donated the money that it cost to get this done. And I guess, do I have the right read here? All right. Well, allegedly Sarah Blasky behind this one. Oh yes, now I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of somebody else. I can't remember the name, but it wasn't Sarah Blasky. But the reporter at the Miami Herald who's done such great work on the Epstein case. And for some reason I was expecting to see her name attached to this one. No, this is another, Pervalago related scandal, that, cropped up the other day. You can see the connection. Everybody is constantly getting, quote unquote, massaged there at Massage-a-Lago. Okay, more than a year before her Super Bowl selfie with the president, Cindy Yang brought two Chinese-born tech executives, an Australia-based cryptocurrency guru known in the industry as The Martian, interestingly enough, and a startup CEO whose firm recently became a jersey sponsor for the Dallas Mavericks, to take formal photos with President Donald Trump. I don't know how formal they actually were. They're just standing there. It might as well be a cardboard cutout of Trump for all intents and purposes. He just has that glued-on smile and the thumbs-up thing. Not an unusual thing for politicians to do, but he's just a particularly disgusting example of it. Both men flashed a thumbs-up for the camera. So did Trump. It was a big moment, and it came in with a big price tag, $50,000 per photo, benefiting, of course, the president's re-election campaign. But neither Ryan Zhu, that's XU in my attempt at pronouncing it, nor Lucas Liu, L-U, appeared to have paid for the privilege. That's, of course, the whole idea of having this particular privilege. And Trump, of course, raises it to an art form, I am sure. But neither one of them paid for the privilege. A search of a federal database showed no record of either man giving to Trump Victory, the political action committee that sold the tickets, as well as perks like photos with the president for the December 2nd, 2017 breakfast fundraiser hosted by the Republican National Committee in New York City. So, who paid Trump Victory for the photos? Yang, Cindy, isn't saying, but she and three associates with an Asian American political group donated a total of $135,500 to Trump Victory in the weeks leading up to the event. None of those associates would comment either. One of them told the Miami Herald she could not recall making a $25,000 donation listed in her name and address. They lose track of $25,000 that easily, these folks do. Yang and her associates have advertised businesses that connect Chinese clients with U.S. politicians. Their strategy reflects a growing industry, selling tickets to U.S. political or charity events through foreign social media sites, sometimes at marked up prices, which is extremely interesting. Selling tickets to campaign fundraisers without disclosing the buyer to the Federal Election Commission is illegal. Selling tickets to foreign nationals who are banned from donating to American political causes would be an additional violation of U.S. law. Only U.S. citizens and permanent residents can contribute, although foreign nationals can attend fundraisers if they do not reimburse anyone for their tickets. Okay, important point there. Let's see. Lost my place for just a second. All right. So you can't reimburse for the tickets. It would be legal for Yang and her associates, there we are, for to give away tickets and high-dollar extras like photos with the president as gifts, but illegal to sell them. So, one more point here. Through a spokesman, Liu said a friend gifted him a ticket to the event, which is legal as long as he never paid anyone back. That is an interesting formulation. He declined to name the friend, though. Zhu did not respond to calls or emails. So, a friend of mine. Many people are giving me tickets. Sure. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. You're on Networks Radio. Just that 1 minute break. Let's continue with this story, and hopefully it won't go on quite as long. But let's see. The basic question here is that people who were being escorted to Republican events, here a Republican fundraiser in New York City, not even a Mar-a-Lago event. This is apparently something that Cindy Yang is able to get Chinese clients into no matter where it's happening or who's hosting. This sort of expands the playing field here. We should take note of that. When she was introduced to us as a person who had inexplicable access to Trump at Massage-a-Lago, but that was almost at this point to be expected. But the idea of being able to get into a Republican fundraiser in New York City with equal ease is of some interest, although, you know, they're just charging at the door. If you've got the money, you get in. But the added weirdness here, we're talking about getting Chinese business people posing for photos with the president that are openly for sale, $50,000 per, but it would be illegal for them to come up with the money, so they didn't. And yet somehow money got into the coffers such that the photo was taken and nobody knows where the money came from. Very interesting. Now, let's see. A spokesman for Lucas Liu provided a copy of his green card issued 3 weeks before the event. It is unclear if Ryan Zhu would have been legally able to pay for his presidential photo. So I guess it's true that, Liu could have paid for the photo himself, or if somebody else paid for the photo, if he paid them back, that would no longer be an illegal transaction, provided, since he got his green card 3 weeks before the event, that it took place in that 3-week window, which is entirely possible. It's unclear, though, if Ryan Zhu would have been legally able to pay for his presidential photo. He lives primarily in Australia, and his U.S. immigration status could not be determined. An RNC spokeswoman said both Zhu and Liu were guests of a U.S. citizen and had been vetted by the Secret Service, but declined to name the donor or donors who brought them. The RNC would have little way of knowing whether any guests had reimbursed donors for tickets. Not that I don't think the Secret Service would look into that, but it's interesting. So at least they were vetted there. There's actually more screening going on there than there is at Massage-a-Lago. Yang, an Asian day spa magnate, that's a kind way of putting it, who founded and formerly owned the spa where New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft stands accused of soliciting prostitution, has become the subject of much interest, and scrutiny since the Miami Herald published photos of her with President Trump and various Florida Republican leaders. She advertised her U.S. political connections while maintaining ties with mainland Chinese organizations, including South Florida chapters overseen by China's Communist Party. She had shown scant interest in politics before Trump's presidential campaign. This week, congressional Democrats requested a counterintelligence investigation into her activities, including a look at whether she violated violated foreign lobbying rules or laws governing the opaque world of campaign finance. Yang, who has not been charged with wrongdoing either in the world of campaign finance or massage parlor-style day spas, and her attorneys did not respond to requests for comment. Yang and her attorneys. That's a very strangely constructed sentence, but okay. They have defended her as a law-abiding American who is being targeted for support for Trump. Sure. Questions of foreign influence and money in U.S. politics are front and center in Washington, D.C. Special Counsel Robert Mueller, you know what he's doing these days. Lobbyist Sam Patten last year pleaded guilty to helping a Ukrainian oligarch illegally purchase 4 tickets to the inauguration. Many guests at the 2017 New York fundraiser did not speak English, according to several people who attended. Why weren't they infuriated by that? I do not know. RNC officials confirmed the presence of Chinese nationals to the Washington Post last year. President Trump noted the unusually high number of Chinese people at his fundraiser, joking, that American businessmen would have to do better to keep up with the Chinese at his events, several attendees said. I bet he did it in just such an interesting way, too. Photos with American leaders are considered valuable currency in business circles abroad. Liu later tweeted out the photo to his roughly 8,000 social media followers, saying that President Trump was happy with a cryptocurrency blockchain technology that Liu had developed. How are you about that? I'm happy. His other company, 5 Miles, or maybe that's Smiles, but using 5 like an S, I'm not sure, offers an online marketplace through a mobile app. Last year, the company, which has offices in Beijing and Dallas, secured a 3-year deal to place its patch on the Dallas Mavericks jersey, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram reported. Liu's spokesman said he may have met Yang at the event, but did not know her. How interesting is that? Zhu, a Bitcoin miner whose business is mostly outside the United States, was more restrained when sharing his photo with the president on social media. The highlight of this pic is my belt, he wrote in Chinese. He seems to have drawn some inspiration from the Trump campaign, however. In 2019, he wrote, "Let's make Bitcoin great again," in several social media posts. That's nearly meaningless, but okay. In Chinese language social media posts and news accounts, both men were listed as guests of Yang's political group, the Washington, D.C. based National Committee of Asian American Republicans. The group is often called the Asian GOP. At the time of the December 2017 event, Yang was the primary fundraiser for the Asian GOP, recruiting guests for fundraisers like the Trump Breakfast, according to the group's executive director, Cliff Lee, L.I. Lee. In addition to the tech executives, Yang's guest list for the Asian GOP group attending the ritzy breakfast at Cipriani restaurant included about a dozen other people, according to social media posts and Chinese language news coverage of the event. They got lots of it, huh? Lots of Chinese language news coverage. Okay. Perhaps most notable was J-I-E, Yang, another Yang, a Chinese financier accused of securities fraud in China who is now living in New York. He was listed in the postings as a presidential-level guest of the Asian GOP, along with Liu and Zhu. Ji Yang said he got his photo taken with the president as well, but he was never sent a copy. In an initial interview, he said he had snuck past the Secret Service. Wow. To have an official photo taken with the president. Good job, Secret Service. He later walked back his comment and said one of the event organizers had informally snapped a shot of him and the president. It still doesn't back off of sneaking by the Secret Service? Okay. Speaking of his legal troubles back home, he said, "The Chinese Communist Party's policies are terrible. They always harass business people like me." No doubt Cindy reported him for that. Shanji Li, a Miami real estate investor who helps wealthy Chinese invest in U.S. development projects in order to get visas. You know, that program. The Kushners love that one. Also attended as an Asian GOP guest. According to social media accounts, Li's Miami restaurant, Da Tang, once published a photo of Cindy Yang on a Facebook post referencing a beauty pageant run by her charity. Well, she's everywhere. Yang also promoted Da Tang on her Facebook page. He, I guess, Shinjae Lee, I guess is he. Is that who? He did not respond to a request for comment. Jianqun Ku, Q-U is the last name here, the co-founder of Yang's charity, Women's Charity Foundation, that is a creative name, is a leader in the foreign arm of the Chinese Communist Party. Ku, attended the breakfast too and took the opportunity to snap a photo with Kellyanne Conway, the president's special counselor. So here we are, Kellyanne Conway happily having her photo taken at a Republican Party fundraiser with a Chinese Communist Party affiliated leader of a foreign arm of the Chinese Communist Party. That makes, I mean, surely Kellyanne Conway had no idea who she was taking the picture with. The point is that everybody had this happen because apparently a New York City fundraiser for the president is populated mostly by Chinese nationals or Chinese-born residents, permanent residents, who just happen to maintain relations with and or operate foreign auxiliaries for the Chinese Communist Party. That's kind of weird. None of Yang's guests donated to Trump victory in their own names, according to contribution records. Basic admission started at $1,000 with VIP access going for $2,700. However, in the weeks before the event, Yang and 3 associates embarked on a flurry of giving to Trump victory. Yang donated $23,500 in 3 payments. Li Jing, a New York-based Chinese socialite who once told a Chinese-language magazine that there is, quote, zero distance between her and the Trumps, gave $27,000. The Asian GOP's director said Jing had helped Yang recruit guests. Although one guest interviewed by the Herald said he got his ticket through Jing, she denied being a recruiter or a fundraiser for the Asian GOP. She said any donation she made was for herself only, and she could not recall contributing $25,000, although she said she made 2 $1,000 donations at around that time. The quote about the distance between her and the Trumps, she told Miami Herald, was a literal reference to how far away she was standing from Ivanka Trump in a photo. That might even be true. John Deng, whom the Asian GOP website listed as director of its Palm Beach County chapter, and his wife donated $85,000. Neither appears to have attended the event in New York. Hui Liu said her husband Deng was traveling. Asked about the donation, she said, "I do not want to talk about that." Deng did not return phone messages. Cindy Yang, John Deng, Hui Liu, and Li Jing all appear to be permanent residents or U.S. citizens. So there's that. Cliff Lee, the Asian GOP's executive director, said Yang was a great fundraiser, but had come to the group with a shaky grasp of campaign finance law, and they split soon after the event. After Lee banned foreign nationals from coming to political events as guests of the Asian GOP, Yang quit as a fundraiser. Still, she wouldn't need the credibility derived from the Asian GOP for much longer. The 2017 event seemed to serve as a launching point for her new career, one of high-level photo-taking, backslapping, and influence peddling to wealthy Chinese. 9 days after facilitating Zhu and Lu's photo, Yang checked into an event at Mar-a-Lago for the first time, according to her Facebook page. The day after that, she registered a consulting business in Florida, promoting Chinese clients' photos with the president and access to his inner circle. Yang spent the next year bouncing from political fundraisers to charity galas, frequenting the White House, various Trump hotels, and Mar-a-Lago. She's tailing him like a spy, in other words. Last month, she snapped a selfie with Trump during a Super Bowl party at his West Palm Beach golf resort. She was planning to move to Washington, D.C. Wow. Don't look now. I think you've picked up a tail. Enforcement of campaign finance violations has waxed and waned over the past 2 decades and seems to be making a resurgence as a priority now, said Ciara Torres Spelisi, an elections law professor at Stetson University. Okay. The Supreme Court has routinely upheld the need for transparency concerning who is donating to and funding political campaigns. The voter needs to know who's supporting this particular candidate because that might help them decide who to vote for, she said. And I guess that wraps up that particular article. It's an interesting take here. All right. Let's see. I think we might have time to squeeze in into this segment Serena Blaze's piece here. Let me think. 414. All right. Well, let's give it a shot and see if we can make it work. I think I had it going there before, and we'll try this one more time. All right. Let's see.
Hi, David.
Whoa.
This is your Oklahoma correspondent, Serena Blaze, with a contribution.
I'm going to pause it there at that point because I can clearly hear that the levels are way higher than I want. So let me see if I can click through a few more buttons. Pretty soon we'll have all this distributed among multiple screens here, and it won't be quite so difficult for me to navigate my way all the way through getting all the levels checked here. All right, well, you know what? Now I'm concerned that we'll run into problems with the timing because I can't, because I think the piece, yeah, there we go. Now I've got the numbers up, and it looks like we'll run out of time before the next commercial break. I've got a 13-minute segment here, and normally when I have that in my soundboard, I'm able to tell much more readily how long the thing is, but I guess maybe it's too big to fit into the soundboard. All right, so we'll start over again when we come back to this in our last segment, and the volume will be way down too. I'm very sorry about that, and maybe in going back and editing the podcast, I can bring that level down a little bit so I don't blow out anybody's eardrums listening on the podcast. Okay, well, let's use the time differently then. Between now and our last break, and pick up on a couple other stories that I've got here in pocket that are equally important. Oh, okay, gonna have to go all the way through that one and get back here to the pocket front page. All right, let's see. Definitely have a number of other stories to share. Here's one that got a lot of attention yesterday after I saw, who tweeted this one around to me? It must have been, was it Kate Sherrill? Did you send me this one here? I think so. And wildly popular it became after tweeting it around with further comment. Let's get to the original report from the Indianapolis Star here. You may have heard this in the last day or so, I guess since yesterday evening, because it really blew up once we started sharing it. It hurt so bad, it says right here in the title here, Indiana teachers shot with plastic pellets during active shooter training. We'll come to the gun issue for today this way. Just want to kind of point out what's going on here. In this story. It's crazy enough all by itself. But as you know, active shooter training, now wildly popular all over the country, because, of course, we can't get it together to do anything about our gun problem in this country. We're all watching New Zealand deal with their gun problem pretty quickly and efficiently. I hope it works the way it's mostly worked for Australia. Totally different situation there, of course. But here in this country, we've long since decided, and it's still in flux, and people are still fighting to make a difference, obviously, and we wish them the best, and we'll help in any way we can. But here in this country, for the most part, to date, we have decided that, there's really nothing we can do about our gun problem in this country. So the best we can do is train everybody how to be shot, basically. And there's been the response in the country among our, in our schools and our business places is, well, there's nothing we can do to minimize the risk of a crazy person entering your school, home, place of business with what amounts to as many machine guns as they can carry and killing everybody that they see. So rather than do anything about that, we will train you how to hide under your desk or run away or, as a last resort, fight or perhaps throw yourself in the way of the bullets so that others may escape. That's where we are as a country. We're teaching people how to respond unarmed. And I know the NRA would like you to respond armed, but how to respond to the people we just can't do anything about, who just show up at schools and workplaces all the time and machine gun everybody. And one of the serious issues with that, besides the fact that we're not doing a goddamn thing about an identifiable and correctable problem, is that there's no real agreement what to do in training these people. Everybody sort of, for lack of anything better, agreed, well, we should be training people how to deal with active shooters. And there was no agreed upon way to train them or who should be doing the training. Although in many cases, you're talking about NRA affiliated or NRA trained personnel who are doing the training as well. Because no one knows who to turn to. And anyway, so basically wherever you go, there's just local decisions being made about what the training should be and who should offer the training. And God only knows where they're coming up with the people to do this. We ran into this problem a couple of years ago with terrorism readiness training for first responders. We have a similar issue in that police departments and other first responders can just basically hire whoever they want for it. And in some cases, they were hiring total crazies because there's no national standards on this stuff or even state standards on this stuff. Now, here's what happened in Indiana. An active shooter training exercise at an Indiana elementary school in January left teachers with welts, bruises, and abrasions after they were shot with plastic pellets, at least, by the local sheriff's office conducting the session. The incident, acknowledged in testimony this week before state lawmakers, was confirmed by two elementary school teachers in Monticello who described an exercise in which teachers were asked by local law enforcement to kneel down against the classroom wall before being sprayed across their backs with plastic pellets without warning. They told us, "This is what happens if you just cower and do nothing," said one of the two teachers, both of whom asked Indy Star not to be identified out of concern for their jobs. "They shot all of us across our backs. I was hit 4 times. It hurt so bad." Now, these teachers and these teachers and the state's largest teachers union want to stop this from happening in other Hoosier schools. And I appreciate their concern, of course, but we would want this to stop in any schools. The Indiana State Teachers Association is lobbying lawmakers to add language prohibiting teachers from being shot with any sort of ammunition to a school safety bill working its way through the State House. We have to now put, how many things have we said on this show? Oh, well, nobody ever thought to put this in the law. Nobody ever thought to put this in the law either. Yes, apparently our laws have to say you can't shoot teachers with anything. No kind of projectiles of ammunition of any sort should be used in active shooter drills. And really, I don't even know whether we should just be more broad than that. It's against the law to fling anything at a teacher in any circumstance. And really just anybody else too, because it's just assault. Let's just be honest about that. Now, there's no explanation, I don't think, in this piece for exactly why they did it, but except for this part that says, this is what you do, if it's what happens if you just cower and do nothing. My guess is that they were trying to teach them that if an active shooter comes in and tells them to, kneel down and face the wall, they are likely to be being executed, not this is how I want to release you from harm. I want the police to come in here and free you. I'm going to give myself up, but I don't want you looking at me. I want you looking at the wall. That's not likely to be the case. But I don't know what they thought the response was really going to be. Well, this is what happens if you cower and do nothing. Well, we know this is an active shooter drill. We thought you were trying to demonstrate some other point. Not that you could shoot us if you had a gun. That much we knew. That's why we're having a active shooter drill. Of course, a person who comes into the school with a gun can shoot us. You've taught me nothing. What were we supposed to do? Stab you with a pencil? To prove that this is how we would really handle it. You now have to kill the people conducting your active shooter drills in order to prove that you really know what to do in a real life situation. It just seems awfully dumb to me. Not to mention the fact that it now introduces inflicting physical harm and pain on the teachers. They're not really going to be thrilled about doing their active shooter drills now, are they? And 2, introduces the possibility of screwing the whole thing up and accidentally shooting a teacher with a real gun. I mean, in this case, the thing that they're using to shoot people with is very clearly not a real gun, but I don't know how many stories I have read in the gun fail annals where trainers who brought both orange plastic fake guns, which are orange plastic for a reason, so that you can tell that you don't have a real gun in your hand, and also live ammunition sidearms, and have screwed up and grabbed the wrong one and fired it. That's all we need, right? Anyway, I'll continue with the article here. What we're looking for is just a simple statement in this bill that would prohibit the shooting of some type of projectile at staff in an active shooter drill, said Gail Zaharalis, director of the government relations for the ISTA, during testimony in support of House Bill 1004 before lawmakers on Wednesday. The White County Sheriff said Thursday that his department has conducted similar training before, but after receiving a complaint, will no longer use the air-powered device called an airsoft gun with teachers. Teachers at Meadowlawn Elementary School were supposed to be receiving what is called ALICE training. That's an acronym, ALICE. I don't know what, but that's the name. An options-based approach. That's so scientific sounding. That encourages students and teachers to be proactive in their response to an active shooter and teaches tactics that include rushing a shooter in some situations. So now you actually have to pummel them. Thousands of schools across the country, including many in Indiana, are using ALICE already. Shooting teachers with plastic pellets is not typically part of the training. I've worked with teachers in other districts who have gone through ALICE, and this did not happen, said Barbara Deerdorf, an ISTA official who represents 16 school districts, including the Twin Lakes District and Meadowlawn Elementary. This is not the normal practice. That's good to know. Deerdorf said the Meadowlawn incident, which she said she learned about several weeks ago, marked the first time she'd heard of such practices being used on teachers in active shooting training. White County Sheriff Bill Brooks, whose department led the training in question, said it has conducted active shooter training in schools for several years and has previously used the airsoft gun. Sure, they carried it around. Did they shoot it? The plastic pellets they used are 4.6 millimeters in diameter, slightly larger than a standard BB. It's a soft, round projectile, he said. The key here is soft. Well, the key here is people are hurt. And there are warnings that come with the airsoft guns that say don't shoot it too close to people and don't shoot them. There's a number of warnings. I guess they ignored all of them. All right, time for our next music break, and we're 6 seconds late because once again, having difficulty with. I know everybody's giving me all sorts of advice about how to fix this thing. I'm gonna have to just get multiple screens in here and have my different apps open on different screens. Because it's just too unreliable. Calling up the little, what do you call it, the toolbar at the bottom that bounces up, and I think I've clicked on the tool I need, but I haven't. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Let's finish up with the story out of the Indy Star here about are preemptively shooting teachers so that we can get it all over with sooner rather than later, I guess. It's really kind of amazing. And the defense offered up by the sheriff's department, it's I don't know, it's kind of like a Trumpy response here, just sort of playing on what I guess they think people will view as common sense, but in fact, has nothing to do with reality. Saying things like, it's called an airsoft gun. It's powered by air, and the key word here is soft. So I shot you with something soft, so what are you complaining about? I don't know, but they have welts, bruises, cuts, and abrasions, and they say it hurt. And I mean, aren't we, we're pretty kind of bad to our teachers enough as it is, right? So now we're supposedly training them as ninjas and first responders. You need to be able to take out an active shooter with a pencil. He's got an AR-15. You got to stab him in the eyeball with a pencil, and it's your duty to do this. Meanwhile, the cops, who are school resource officers, are hiding outside. You have to be the ninja here. And in the meantime, we're also going to torture you with airsoft guns and shoot you in the back and bloody you up a little bit. I don't know. It seems pretty dumb, but I'm sure that out in Trump country, they're like, yeah, it says soft right in the name. I mean, it hurts, so what do you want? Anyway, more justification here. Brooks became sheriff in January and said he couldn't say if or how many times teachers had been shot with this airsoft gun previously. He was present for part of the January training, but not the portion in which the airsoft gun was used. They all knew they could be, that is to say, shot. Brooks said, it's a shooting exercise. Well, no, I don't think they all knew that they could be shot in it. It's an exercise about somebody else shooting, and it's supposed to be simulated. I mean, it's just a dumb excuse. Brooks said all the teachers involved signed up to participate. Thanks. So it's your fault. This is very Trumpy, this answer. He said the department was told several weeks after the training that one teacher was upset by it. One, right? They've since stopped using the airsoft gun with teachers, which would be a nice response if they really thought it was only one of them, but it's not. We were made aware that one teacher was upset, he said, and we ended it. That's great, but you shot several of them. Both of the Meadow Lawn teachers who spoke to Indy Star said they were not warned by the officers beforehand that anyone would be shot. They said they were given paintball masks, which law enforcement said were a precaution for different scenarios throughout the training, which I guess you could take as a hint there will be projectiles, which there shouldn't be, but I don't know that they were... certainly they weren't warned that they could be shot execution style. And why do you need to even do that, right? You get everybody to kneel down. Can't you just announce, and now officially you're all dead because the person who made you kneel down had every intention of killing you and no intention of letting you go. You should have fought back here. And I mean, dumb lesson in the sense that, what are people really going to do in a training scenario? Are they really going to fight the cops in a training scenario? I mean, I guess that'd be a great response, by the way. I mean, it won't work out very well for you, so I don't recommend it to you legally, but it'd be an amazing response to something like this if you just decked the cops who were... don't deck anybody, but it would be theoretically, like, what do you do about that? Well, now you're being arrested for assaulting an officer. No, it's an active shooting training. You knew it was going to happen. You're teaching us to fight back. It's a fight back situation, a fight back exercise. Would that excuse fly? Don't do this, obviously. But the point of the rhetorical exercise is, no, it wouldn't work. You'd be in big trouble. All right. Well, anyway, the teacher said the airsoft gun was used in several other exercises as well. Neither of them were hit with pellets, these two teachers who spoke to the Indy Star, during those scenarios, but several other teachers were. All teachers in the first scenario were shot, though, when they were lined up facing a wall and shot across their backs. One of the teachers said she was waiting in the library with her colleagues as the first small group of teachers was led into a classroom for one session. The first group went in and we heard them scream and yell. She said, we thought, what is going on? The group came back out and whispered a warning to the next group. The officers had told them not to tell their colleagues what had happened. but she still wasn't expecting what came next. It was like a quick spew of those pellets, she said. Most of us got hit several times in our backs. She said she had welts and one spot where the pellet broke her skin. It was scabbed over for several weeks. It's not a serious injury, but broken skin. Why did you have to do that? That's the big question, obviously. And I think the excuse that the department might give is, well, we were trying to show them, like, if we had shot the first group and everybody heard the yelling and screaming, then in a real life situation, you would assume that people are in there being executed. And when they came to get the next group, you wouldn't go quietly. But again, demonstrating that you're learning the lessons means decking the cops. So is that tolerated by the cops? I doubt it very much. Both teachers Indy Star spoke to said all Meadow Lawn teachers and some cafeteria staff went through the training in January. There were 2 sessions with kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade teachers and cafeteria workers getting trained in the morning, and 3rd through 5th grade teachers in the afternoon. A picture posted on the school's official Facebook page on January 4th shows teachers sitting around wooden tables with a law enforcement officer standing before them. It's captioned, "Thankful for the partnership between our school and local law enforcement. Today our staff received training from the White County Sheriff's Department. Safety is priority at ML," except they've all been wounded, of course. But they had glasses on. Twin Lakes Superintendent Michael Galvin released a statement Thursday saying the district has met with the Sheriff's Department and the local chapter of the Teachers Union about the training. I imagine that the meeting went not all that well. Julie Topp, Vice President of Member Representation for Twin Lakes Classroom Teachers Organization, said she met with the Meadow Lawn teachers last week and heard the same story from more than a dozen different teachers. They voluntarily signed up for this training. However, they had no idea they were going to be shot, she said. Ken Trump, what do you know? No relation, I'm sure. A school safety expert. How? In what sense? We don't know. In Ohio, who works with schools nationwide, said he had not heard of another incident in which teachers were shot with plastic pellets, but that he's heard many stories of teachers getting injured during active shooting training. Sadly, it doesn't surprise me, he said. With some of these options-based trainings, we've seen training that's just really over the top. And I assume that there's just no regulation of it whatsoever. Trump said he's heard of a growing number of workers' compensation claims and even some litigation stemming from teacher injuries during these types of training programs. An Iowa school insurance company reportedly paid out more than $250,000 in claims related to active shooter training injuries over a 2-year period. This is kind of amazing. Oftentimes, these programs are taught in a train-the-trainer model. 1 or 2 law enforcement officers will receive the training through an organization and then go back and train others in their department. It can leave room for interpretation, Trump said. One teacher said the officers at the Meadow Lawn staff told the Meadow Lawn staff that police had to go through this same training. But we are not police officers, she said. The 2 teachers who spoke with Indy Star said they wanted to do the training. Even after getting shot with plastic pellets that left welts and bruises and drew blood, they finished the rest of the training. We didn't want to quit the training because it seemed important, said one teacher. It really was more than it needed to be. And that's really that seems like an important point there. It seemed important. It turns out it really wasn't, probably, and might even have been less than helpful, might have been hurtful. But it seemed important. That's the thing. This stuff is so fly by night, and the idea of two people from the police department go to a training, and then they come back and train the rest of the department. They're not qualified trainers because they went through the training. You could tell people what it was sort of like, but I don't know if you could do the training. But again, you've gone through something. My dad always used to tell me as a defense lawyer that an expert is someone who's done something once. And it's never more true than a situation like this. It's just very strange. All right, well, let's see. It highlights larger problems with active shooter training around the country. And there are a number of articles about the alleged ineffectiveness of it. And in fact, the counter-effectiveness of it. It's actually does more harm than good in many situations. And it's unfortunate that this still goes on unregulated. And, you know, only in listening to a story like this do you ever find out that, school systems around the country are paying out $250,000 settlements from insurance from injuries to active shooting. So again, our response is hurting more people than the problem itself. But the problem itself could be addressed up front and straightforwardly, but we can't do that in this country because guns equal freedom, even though the rest of the world is doing it pretty quickly and easily. Granted, they don't have Second Amendments, but man, we could have found ourselves in a different situation. And if we just have the political will to do it, we could probably have a more sensible response to the problem of mass shootings in schools than massively shooting our teachers for practice. All right, let's switch this off here, and let's try once again to play the story of the Oklahoma Opportunity Zones while we still have a chance to do that. I'm sorry about the delay, Serena, and I think I've got this engineered up right. Won't blow your eardrums out. Let's roll it.
Hi, David. This is your Oklahoma correspondent, Serena Blades, with a contribution that you may find interesting. I'm going to read an article from Oklahoma Watch published on February 21st entitled, "Will States' Opportunity Zones Intended for the Poor Benefit Mostly the Rich?" And it was posted under the category Poverty. The writer is Paul Monies. Oklahoma Watch describes itself as a nonprofit tax-exempt 501c3 corporation whose mission is to produce in-depth and investigative journalism on public policy and quality of life issues facing the state. It's a quote from their website. And I'd like to add just a short preface before reading the article. After reading it, I did a little online research and saw several stories from around the country posted within the past week or so on this topic. And for the last few days, I'm recording this on the 22nd, Vice President Pence has been on a tour to promote the program, accompanied by Tim Scott, the sole Republican senator. Trump also mentioned the program at a Black History Month function at the White House on the 21st, and that same day, the Washington Post had put up a story entitled, "Pence Promotes Opportunity Zones as Trump Faces Criticism Over Race and Policies to Aid the Poor." My quick search showed that the Wall Street Journal and Forbes, among others, are not boosters of this program for their investment class readers. In short, I sense that the PR tour is a result of some of this criticism. And in this story, you'll hear several locations around the state mentioned, and unlike the New York Times, Oklahoma Watch doesn't provide an explainer on everything it references, so just some quick points to help clarify. Oklahoma City is a huge, sprawling metro area, and its south and east sides tend to be less affluent and contain pockets of long-standing neglect or more recent decline. Oklahoma City elected a new mayor last year, and the state has a new governor as of this year, and both, of course, are Republicans, but neither were part of the development or approval of the Oklahoma Opportunity Zone map. And final pre-article reference point, for almost 20 years, Oklahoma City has had a citizen-approved, tax-funded development program called MAPS, and almost all of the development has centered on the downtown area, which was very blighted 20 years ago, but this disparity has been more recently a major gripe in the city's much more populous suburban neighborhoods. So without further ado, let me get to the Oklahoma Watch story, "Will States' Opportunity Zones Intended for the Poor Benefit Mostly the Rich?" A new federal tax incentive to encourage long-term investments in low-income areas includes most of downtown Oklahoma City and Tulsa and other pockets of prosperity in the state, but excludes many areas that are impoverished. The contrast raised questions about how the areas, called opportunity zones, were selected and whether the tax breaks will attract investments that mostly benefit extremely poor areas or ones where investments were already going. A review of an Oklahoma map with the zones brings home the point. Oklahoma City Opportunity Zones cover much of Midtown and most of downtown. They take in the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center complex, but miss some of the low-income, predominantly black neighborhoods adjacent to it. The northeast side zones include the Northeast 23rd Street corridor, which the city has long targeted for increased investment, Martin Luther King Avenue, and the I-35 corridor. A zone does include a troubled industrial and low-income stretch on the west side between I-35 and 10th Street. Another zone abuts high-income Nichols Hills and includes the Chesapeake Energy campus, although it also extends into industrial and residential areas off Lincoln Boulevard. Little of the south side of Oklahoma City is included, except the former Crossroads Mall area. Santa Fe South Charter School occupies the former mall. The Capitol Hill area is ignored. And just parenthetically, Capitol Hill is a heavily Hispanic area. Back to the article. In Tulsa, chunks of the historically black north side were left out, although the downtown zone and Tulsa International Airport areas include some surrounding neighborhoods. Tulsa's other zones include the industrial west side of the Arkansas River, Sand Springs, and the University of Tulsa area, and a single tract around Broken Arrow's entertainment and shopping Rose District. Google's data center, which is being expanded again, is in an opportunity zone in the Mid-America Industrial Park south of Pryor. It's the only zone in Mayes County which has 5 other low-income census tracts that didn't make the state's cut. Most of McCurtain County in far southeastern Oklahoma is an opportunity zone. That area has long struggled with poverty, but also encompasses holdings of timber giant Weyerhaeuser. 30 Oklahoma counties do not have any opportunity zones. Oklahoma and Tulsa counties each have 21. What they are. Opportunity zones, which were part of a package of tax cuts Congress passed in late 2017, allow investors to reduce or eliminate federal capital gains taxes. The investors can be individuals, companies, or funds set up specifically to invest in the zones. There are no caps on the incentive, although investment must go into low-income census tracts selected by governors in each state. The law allowed states to designate up to 1/4 of their low-income census tracts as opportunity zones. For Oklahoma, that means 117 of the state's 465 eligible low-income tracts. Nationwide, 8,764 zones were designated as opportunity zones. State and city leaders are touting the opportunity zones in meetings and online. Investment seminars are being organized on the coast to attract high net worth individuals. Officials say the program is a prime opportunity to accelerate investment that benefits both specific areas and broader surrounding ones. One analysis shows $6.1 trillion in unrealized capital gains are on the books of corporations and individuals. This is a quote from John Lettieri, co-founder of the Economic Innovation Group, in a congressional hearing last year. Quote, even a small fraction of these gains reinvested into opportunity zones would constitute the largest economic development initiative in the country, unquote. Others are skeptical. They question whether the program will live up to its purpose, saying the investments could increase gentrification in urban areas and displace poorer residents. They also worry much of the money will go into big-ticket urban real estate deals that already made financial sense. Quote from Stephen M. Rosenthal, the fundamental problem with opportunity zones is the disconnect between the size of the potential tax costs, which are uncapped, and the social benefits from the investments, which will be hard to measure. And Rosenthal is a senior fellow in the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center at the Urban Institute. Downtown Oklahoma City has seen hundreds of millions in public and private investment in the past several decades. In these 7 tracts that make up much of downtown, the Census Bureau estimates their total population at just 3,800 people, although hundreds of new apartments have been built in the past several years. The tract covering Chesapeake has roughly 2,300 residents. To designate the low-income tracts, the federal tax law said states must use 5-year population estimates from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey for 2011 through 2015. The only businesses that don't qualify to participate are gambling establishments, country clubs, golf courses, massage parlors, and liquor and beer stores. Theoretically, an energy company could invest in oil and gas or renewable energy projects located in an opportunity zone. Investors or companies also could target specific industries like aerospace or community needs like affordable housing. How they were chosen. The zones were announced with little fanfare and no insight into the criteria used to select them. The tax law gave states' governors complete autonomy as long as they met certain income or poverty requirements. Oklahoma had 90 days to select the Opportunity Zone tracts last year. Through the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, then Governor Fallon's office consulted with chambers of commerce, tribal leaders, and economic development officials to make the designations, said Leslie Blair, a spokeswoman for the Commerce Department. At least 34 states had some type of public input on the designations of opportunity zones, according to the Economic Innovation Group, which helped develop the policy and is monitoring its implementation. Both California and Colorado published draft maps of zones, which were then refined with public input. Oklahoma did not hold any public meetings because they weren't required, Blair said. In addition, governors were allowed to designate a small number of tracts next to low-income tracts, but those tracts must have median family incomes that don't exceed 125% of the median in the adjacent low-income tracts. No more than 5% of a state's opportunity zones can have that contiguous designation. Governor Kevin Stitt, Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt, and Tulsa Mayor G.T. Bynum have all touted the potential opportunity zones to attract new investment to the state. This is quoting Governor Stitt. It's going to be a tremendous opportunity for Oklahoma to recruit businesses to our state. And that was from a January 17th press conference. He designated Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell as his administration's point man on development of the zones. Pinnell plans a series of summits in the coming months to promote the zones in rural areas. David Holt, who took office in April, said the zones were designated before he took office and the state led much of the process. Overall, he's happy with 21 zones in Oklahoma City, although he wishes the Capitol Hill area in southwest Oklahoma City had been included. And here's what he had to say. The opportunity zones downtown and in the Innovation District east of downtown are obviously low-hanging fruit and probably sell themselves to some extent. But we would really feel disappointed in the end if we weren't able to leverage them to get more investment in Northeast 23rd or Crossroads Mall or Northwest 10th, some of those more challenged areas that are also a part of the opportunity zones. Unquote. Marketing the zones. With the zones designated, state and city officials are in marketing mode. Oklahoma City is partnering with a nonprofit, Accelerator for America, to come up with a prospectus for investors. The city's Opportunity Zone effort is coordinated by the Alliance for Economic Development, which contracts with the city for economic development. And here's a quote from Ken Kamas, Tulsa's Chief of Economic Development. We took a look at all the eligible tracts and then from there tried to figure out the areas of the city where there was a planned public investment for now or in the near future that could potentially spur additional private investment. Unquote. For example, Tulsa picked census tracts along a new bus rapid transit route that extends to North Tulsa with a plan to attract a major employer to the area. The View is one of the city's first housing developments to take advantage of the incentive and has designated 20% of its units for affordable housing, Kamas said. Quote, there's still very much distressed areas where there's a lot of work to do, but we knew that we already had strategies in place that would allow the city to make public investments, or where we knew there were already planned philanthropic investments that could really help encourage and maybe reduce the risk or perceived risk of a private investor, he said. The Commerce Department is contacting city and counties with opportunity zones to see what kind of investments could be marketed to investors, said John Chiappi, Director of Research and Economic Analysis. It also plans to reach out to qualified opportunity funds, which allows investors to pool their money in funds that invest in the zones. Quote from Chiappi, if we can highlight some of these opportunities to investors outside the state, then we can potentially attract capital to the state for development. In Duncan, it might be an industrial park. In Bartlesville, it might be affordable housing and whatever's important to that community. Unquote. The agency is also trying to track investment to see if the Opportunity Zone designation had a positive effect on poverty and employment. The incentive is more beneficial the longer an investor has money in a project or fund, so gathering that data will take time. In a joint letter to the IRS, Oklahoma and 11 other states urged federal officials to require opportunity funds to report where they've invested in opportunity zones, the amount of capital deployed, and the appreciation of that capital. Currently, there is no public reporting requirement. Well, that's it, David. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Serena. Okay, yeah, that is pretty interesting, actually. That closing sentence seems like the important part, actually. No current public reporting requirement. And I'm glad Oklahoma is actually interested in having that reporting done. But I guess one of the more interesting things about the Opportunity Zone idea is that for a long time, one, there's always been these weird loopholes that allow you to declare someplace an Opportunity Zone and exempt people from taxation for, let's say, more questionable development. Although I did like, my ears definitely perked up at the point at which you discussed the fact that there were certain sorts of businesses that don't qualify for participation in opportunity zones, and they included country clubs, golf courses, and massage parlors, like 3 in a row. I thought that's really something. Are we sure that Trump favors these things? But I guess they don't cover the Kushner businesses, and they seem poised and ready to capitalize on these things. And a bunch of interesting issues raised there, and you'll find them all over the country, and you'll find them deployed with varying levels of success and consultation with local groups, and in all likelihood running away with tax-free money for people who probably don't need it in some cases, before we ever find out that there even was a process for designating these things. And I'm sure the process for designation is, let's say, fraught with peril all by itself. Okay, well, time to wrap things up here, and I just thought I would note one more story that looks like it's still developing that we haven't mentioned. The New York Times and other outlets reporting that the 2 downed Boeing 737 MAX 8, are they both MAX 8 airliners from both Lion Air and Ethiopian Airlines, apparently lacked certain additional safety features that Boeing makes available for the software package that manages the plane's operations. And quite honestly, what it looks like it comes down to here is that if you want the safety stuff that goes along with the software, not just the plane itself, but it's apparently an extra charge, like downloadable content, as somebody was saying on Twitter, that, if you want the extra safety stuff that can help you save the plane from taking an automated nosedive in the middle of your flight, you can have that. It could save the lives of everybody on board your plane and save your investment in the plane as well. Probably supposed to be the secondary consideration in all this. All you have to do is pay extra to download it from, I don't know where, Boeing.com or whatever. And I guess there's no regulatory requirement to have these extras. It's just interesting. Boeing has long been in the business, the article notes, of selling extras, but it's usually physical extras. If your airline would like to order a plane from their stock fleet that has extra seating or extra bathrooms or extra wide seating or extra wide bathrooms, for that matter, you can do that sort of thing. But I guess the latest and hottest stuff is to do it with the software too, because why not? You can make an awful lot of money doing it. People die. But whatever. We'll see whether that changes anything, and whether discussing of the issue over the weekend changes anything, or whether that is all supplanted by crazy anger tweeting from Massage-a-Lago or something else of the sort. All right, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. We take the weekend break. We'll be back on Monday. Plenty to listen to coming up next. Do stay tuned.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, lots coming up. Preet Bharara apparently reluctantly admits that Trump can be indicted. I told you, you just have to have the will for it. Then, other stories coming up next. Wisconsin GOP's underhanded plan to nullify the newly elected Democratic governor was dealt a jolting blow, the best kind, I think. Stay tuned for those stories and more, and we'll see you after the weekend.